Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Catch, Hook, and Shoot. Today is Sunday, July 29th. Thanks, everybody, for checking out the show. As always, remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. Search Catch, Hook, Shoot. You should be able to find all of our pages. Of course, you can get the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, Podbean. Pretty much anywhere you would find most of your podcasts. So starting off the show on kind of a sad note today, learned this morning of passing of two, possibly three former WWE and wrestling stars. First of all, Nikolai Volkov passed away at the age of 70. Secondly is Brickhouse Brown. Of course, he was originally reported to have passed away on July the 20th. Come to find out that wasn't true at that time, but apparently it has been confirmed that he did pass away today. And there's unconfirmed reports of Brian Christopher, Brian Lawler, Jerry Lawler's son, passing away. Apparently he was found this morning in his jail cell. He had hanged himself, was taken to the hospital. The last official report that I saw said he was on life support. I have seen conflicting reports saying that he has passed away. I haven't seen anything reported from the WWE or any really reputable news sources saying that he had passed away yet. Hasn't been any statements from the family. As this is being recorded, I have not seen any anyway. So hopefully he is still alive and can make a recovery. Yeah, definitely rest in peace to Nikolai Volkov, one of the great quintessential foreign heels of the 1980s. Of course, he and Iron Sheik wrestled at the very first WrestleMania, won the Tag Team Championships from the U.S. Express of Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham. And of course, Brickhouse Brown. Again, like I said, apparently his death was confirmed as of today. Unfortunately, he had been suffering from prostate cancer. Excuse me, and they had originally reported that he had passed away, like I said, just over a week ago, but it turned out to not be true. But apparently it is confirmed today that Brickhouse Brown passed away as well. Definitely going to be keeping an eye on the Brian Christopher situation. Like I said, hopefully it is a situation where he has not passed away and they're able to do something for him. And he's able to make a recovery. I know they said that things didn't look good. It was likely that he probably wouldn't recover. From the sounds of it, it was just a matter of time before he did pass away. But hey, miracles happen all the time. So hopefully this is one of those cases where he can make a recovery. So moving on to what's going on in the world of wrestling this week. There's rumors floating around that The Rock could possibly be making an appearance on Raw this week. Raw is being broadcast from Miami. Of course, The Rock's home. And apparently, the rumor is doing something with Elias, which I think would be, very entertaining. The Rock is hilarious on the microphone. Elias has definitely come into his own on the mic, and I think something between the two of them, especially if The Rock decides to put on one of his rock concerts, kind of have some back and forth with Elias, I think it'd just be really funny, really entertaining. So we'll see if that actually happens. And some more rumors about The Rock floating around is about him wanting to wrestle at WrestleMania 35 next year. And another rumor I saw earlier today was that it could possibly be against Roman Reigns. So that's definitely something to watch. Of course, The Rock was the one who came out and kind of put his stamp on Roman when Roman won the Royal Rumble a few years back. And they've played on the Samoan Dynasty angle with Roman more than once. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. Of course, there's a lot of questions around The Rock, whether he can wrestle, not like physically, but as far as like insurance things. I mean, The Rock is the top actor in Hollywood right now. So if he were to get injured, it would affect a lot of people, a lot of projects, things like that. So, there's definitely a lot of insurance liability to think about there, and, finding out if he would even be allowed to wrestle a full-on match. So again, that's gonna have to wait and see. Of course, last week we found out on SmackDown that Samoa Joe will be challenging AJ Styles at SummerSlam for the WWE Championship. I am looking forward to this match more than you can believe. I mean, I saw all of their matches in TNA, some of the greatest matches I've ever seen. Hopefully, and this is at the beginning of a rivalry, so this could be more along the lines of what we saw from AJ and Shinsuke at WrestleMania. It was a great match, but it wasn't anything, breathtaking. It wasn't the show stealer everybody thought it would be, because, and I know I said this before, it was the beginning of the rivalry rather than the payoff. So, this with Joe and AJ, this is the kind of the beginning of the rivalry, so we may not get that 5-star match this time, but hopefully, you never know. Send two of them out there, let them do what they do, because they are more than capable of stealing the show and making that the best match on the card. Another interesting SummerSlam note, of course, SummerSlam is always the second biggest show of the year, and there's rumors swirling around that John Cena versus The Undertaker rematch is going to take place at SummerSlam. So if that's the case, I'm sure we'd probably see one or both of them popping back up on WWE TV in the next couple of weeks. Something to keep an eye on. Now, from what I've read, The Undertaker is confirmed for SummerSlam, but John Cena is not. I mean, of course, he's got a lot of things going on outside the WWE as far as acting and everything else that he's a part of. So, but I'd like to see another match between these two. I think the WrestleMania match they had this past year was good. Obviously, I mean, but I think the two of them, could, given more time, could probably have a really good match. Possibly on the same level as Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, with Shawn Michaels' retirement match several years ago at WrestleMania. Of course, both of these guys are capable of putting on that level of match, so I have to wait and see how that one comes out. Some more news from the all-women's pay-per-view Evolution coming up in October. WWE has confirmed that Trish Stratus and Lita will be a part of that pay-per-view, which I think that's a no-brainer. I mean, they're two of the best all-time in the women's division, like I said, it's a no-brainer to make them part of it. Not only two of the best, but two of the most popular as well. And also, of course, Bria and Nikki Bella sure will be a part of it. I believe, I don't know, I've read that posted somewhere. I think at this point it's just a rumor, but the Bellas are obviously still connected with WWE through their reality shows and things like that. So I think we would definitely wouldn't be a surprise to see the Bellas as part of Evolution. Another thing I touched on last week is WWE showing some interest in some New Japan stars as far as Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and the Young Bucks. Well, now, from what I'm reading, is they have some interest in signing Juice Robinson, who is right now the New Japan United States champion. Of course, he was previously in NXT under a different name. He has said he has no interest in going back to WWE, but there's been a lot of guys that have said that and then have shown back up. So, like they always say, you never say never. So, I mean, if there was some way they could sign all of those guys, that would be huge. But then, on the other side of that, New Japan is interested in signing back some of the guys that WWE has gotten from them previously, like AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Gallows and Anderson. Now, I don't see AJ going back to New Japan anytime soon. He's having a lot of success in WWE. I mean, obviously, he is the top guy on SmackDown right now. He is the WWE champion. Nakamura, I don't know. I mean, most of the things I've read said most likely he would not go back to New Japan. Just because WWE, obviously, I think is offering him significantly more money, but you never know. I mean, New Japan definitely has the resources to at least make a viable counteroffer to whatever WWE is offering him. So, would it surprise me to see Nakamura pop back up in New Japan? Not really. I don't think he's been used to his full potential since he's been brought up to the main roster. Obviously, in NXT, he had huge success. Just kind of didn't cross over to SmackDown. So, Wouldn't surprise me too much to see him jump back to New Japan if that does happen. Along the same lines, Gallows and Anderson wouldn't really surprise me at all to see them back in New Japan. They haven't, since they lost the Raw Tag Team titles to the Hardys at WrestleMania. Really haven't done much with them. They've been used as kind of a comedy act at certain points. They paired the two of them up with Finn Balor briefly, kind of reuniting the original Bullet Club. But again, I don't think they've been used to their full potential, and they should be like on par with the Bludgeon Brothers as far as I'm concerned. I think the Bludgeon Brothers versus the Good Brothers, I think, would be an outstanding match, but I just I don't see Gallows and Anderson being used that way, and it's unfortunate because they're one of the top tag teams in the world. It is what it is. I mean, they are on par with teams like the Bludgeon Brothers, like the Usos. I almost put them in the same category as the Dudley Boys as far as popularity and in-ring ability and charisma and things like that. So wouldn't surprise me too much to see Gallows and Anderson back in New Japan and back with the Bullet Club or against the Bullet Club at some point. You never know. Moving on to the Mae Young Classic. Of course, I didn't touch too much on this last week, and I should have, but WWE's been making a lot of announcements as far as participants. Of course, my personal all-time favorite women's division competitor, Caitlin Celeste Bonin, was announced as the first participant, so it'll be great to see her back in the WWE. Anybody who follows her on social media knows she's been training and working some indie dates on, kind of working her way back into the ring. And she hadn't really mentioned about going back to WWE. I know she'd been asked a few times and kind of not avoided the question, but didn't give a straight answer. So I think it's really cool to see her back as far as the Mae Young Classic goes. Hopefully that's not the end of it. Hopefully, we'll see her maybe in NXT, maybe on the main roster, or even the same route as Serena Deeb, working as a trainer in the Performance Center. Who knows? But it'd be awesome to see Caitlin back on WWE TV in one way or another. Then, of course, Mia Yim, who was in the Mae Young tournament last year, going to be in it again this year. She's definitely one I think is very, very underrated as far as WWE goes. Why she wasn't signed last year after the tournament, I don't know. I think she would fit right in with the current women's division in WWE. So hopefully, this year she's one I would definitely look for to win the tournament. So hopefully they give her a strong look this year and possibly sign her to the company. I think that'd be definitely good for everyone involved. Some more competitors that they've signed for the tournament is Toni Storm, Mercedes Martinez, Deonna Purrazzo. So the Mae Young tournament is shaping up to be a very entertaining show. So I'm really, really excited, looking forward to that. And of course, the finals will be at the Evolution pay-per-view, along with all three WWE women's titles being defended. So that show, I think, is shaping up to be pretty good too. And I think that's it as far as news goes for this week. So the topic I wanted to talk about on this week's show is just kind of a little bit of a countdown. This is my own opinions. This is obviously not the end-all, be-all or anything, but what I'm doing today is counting down the top 10 World Heavyweight Champions of all time, in my opinion. Some you may agree with, some you may disagree with. You may not agree with my ordering. There's a couple in there I think some people are probably going to be upset about, but like I said, this is from my viewpoint as a wrestling fan, as a wrestling historian, amateur wrestling historian, and things like that. So let's start right off. My number 10 is Kazuchika Okada, four-time IWGP champion. Just recently lost that title to Kenny Omega, ending his fourth reign at a record 720 days. Now you think about that in today's wrestling atmosphere, you do not see title reigns going that long. I mean, you're talking about basically, a 2-year-long world championship reign, which in today's day and age is unheard of. And the IWGP, of course, another statistic they look at is the number of title defenses. Of course, in that time, Okada had 12, which again is a record for the IWGP Championship, and Kazuchika Okada is only 30 years old. He's been world champion 4 times, now holds the record for the longest reign and most title defenses. So unless something drastic happens, he's only going to go up from here. I mean, this is a guy that I know New Japan has got locked down to a long-term contract after they lost AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, Gallows, and Anderson. They kind of started to move away from their 1-year contracts for their big stars, which was always the norm for them. They went, year to year basically. But I believe Okada was actually signed to a 5-year contract. So he's definitely, he's already a huge star. He's the #1 guy in New Japan, and as far as I can tell, like I said, he's only 30 years old. He's only going to continue going up and up and up. So, and I know that's Okada's one that WWE would like to get their hands on if they could, but we'll have to wait and see how that one plays out. So, moving on, number 9 on my list is Shane Douglas. And the reason for that, I know this is one that's probably going to raise some eyebrows, like why Shane Douglas, but he was a 4-time ECW world champion, the very first ECW world champion. And the way he became the ECW world champion for the first time was he was already the ECW Eastern Championship Wrestling champion when ECW was just a regional promotion. And of course, they held a tournament to crown the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion, which Shane Douglas won. I'm sure everybody's seen the famous video of him throwing down the 10 pounds of gold, this beautiful title right here, throwing it down to the mat and declaring himself the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. And it was at that point that Eastern Championship Wrestling broke away from the National Wrestling Alliance and renamed themselves Extreme Championship Wrestling and became basically the #3 company in the world behind the WWF at that time and WCW. And that all kind of started with Shane Douglas. Obviously it was Paul Heyman kind of the mastermind behind all that, but Shane Douglas was the guy that was on camera. He's the guy that had to make the little speech. He was the one that had to throw the title down, and he's the one that kind of stirred everything up and got everybody in it, got everybody behind ECW, which of course, ECW honestly I think went way beyond what anybody ever expected for them. And like I said, that all started with Shane Douglas, so that's why I put him at number 9, because he, his championship reign did kind of change the business at that point. Number 8, I got the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. He was a 2-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and of course he was the very first WWE champion. At that time it was the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the WWF. Basically, Rogers was the NWA champion. He lost a 1-fall match to Lou Thesz. And at that time, championship matches were typically 2 out of 3 falls. So the way that it happened was the Capital Wrestling Corporation, which was the precursor to the WWF, owned by Vince McMahon Sr., they continued to recognize Buddy Rogers as champion and broke away from the National Wrestling Alliance, renamed themselves Worldwide Wrestling Federation, declared Buddy Rogers their heavyweight champion. Of course, wasn't too long after that Rogers lost the title to Bruno Sammartino, and he went on that long 8-year title reign throughout the 60s. So, but that, again, all started with Buddy Rogers. So, again, that's something that kind of changed the face of the business, because look at where WWE is now, and it all started with, with Buddy Rogers as the first champion. Number 7 on my list is AJ Styles. And this is another one that might surprise people, because AJ is really one of only, he's really the only full-time active wrestler besides Okada that's on this list. Everybody else is either retired or part-time or anything like that. But AJ obviously is a 2-time IWGP champion, 3-time NWA, 2-time TNA, 2-time WWE. He's a 5-time TNA Triple Crown champion, a 2-time TNA Grand Slam champion. So I mean, that all speaks for itself. AJ is probably, I mean, still in my opinion, the number one wrestler in the world right now. Of course, you can make arguments for Okada and Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes and everything for that spot, but to me, AJ is the guy. He is the top star in the world right now, WWE champion, and yeah, like I said, definitely belongs in this list of top 10 world heavyweight champions of all time. Former leader of the Bullet Club, and just pardon the pun, but a phenomenal in-ring performer, and definitely worthy of a space in the top 10 world heavyweight champions of all time. Now, number 6 on my list, this is the one where I'm probably going to lose some people, and that's okay. But these are, like I said, again, these are my opinions. This is my top 10 ranking. If you disagree with me, that's fine. But yeah, the number 6 spot on my list goes to John Cena, and the reason for that is just because, I mean, he is 16-time world heavyweight champion, which officially is a tie with Ric Flair. As the most title reigns of all time. I mean, he's been the number one guy in WWE for a decade and a half almost. I mean, his work ethic is unquestionable. His in-ring work is great. I mean, yeah, everybody complains about the 5 moves of doom, but everybody has their moveset. Everybody has their, I mean, Hogan had the big boot body slam leg drop clothesline. That was his thing. So all the top stars have their their set of moves where it's like, okay, the end is coming. But I think Cena catches a lot of unnecessary heat. It's another one of those things where it's kind of along the same lines as Roman Reigns. Oh, it's cool to boo Cena, and I have no problem with John Cena. He works his tail off. He, in the ring, outside the ring, like I said, his work ethic is unquestionable, and to me, in my eyes, I think in most smart fans' eyes, he's definitely earned his spot. He's earned those 16 title reigns, and it's it's well deserved, and he has earned a spot in the conversation for the top guys of all time. Now, number 5 on my list is hopefully most of you guys out there know who he is. Hopefully there's some old school guys out there, fans out there like myself. But number 5 on my list is Harley Race, former 8-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. This is a guy who has won and lost the title from people like Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Jack Briscoe, some of the top names of the 70s and early 80s. First man to hold the NWA championship that many times, like I said, 8 times, and just one of the all-time greats. I only really saw Harley Race towards the end of his career when he was wrestling in WWE as the King Harley Race. But thankfully I've been able to go back and see some older tapes from the NWA and see some of his older matches. To go back to the very first Starrcade, it was Harley Race and Ric Flair in a steel cage for the World Heavyweight Championship. And any of you guys that have the WWE Network, go back and watch that match. Watch Starrcade '83, Ric Flair and Harley Race, one of the best cage matches you're ever going to see. So Harley Race, number 5. Number 4 on my list, another very old school name is Lou Thesz. Now I know a lot of people may not know the name, may not have ever seen him wrestle. One of the all-time greats as far as just a pure wrestler goes. He was really the last, not the last, but close to being one of the last what they call hookers. And no, not hookers in the modern sense of the word. Back in the early 20th century, a hooker was a legitimate wrestler who could pretty much go in there and tie you in knots. And that's what Lou Thesz was, just a fantastic in-ring performer, and he's the champion that kind of bridged the gap between the early 20th century when pro wrestling was a legitimate competitive sport There were no predetermined outcomes. It was two guys got in there and they wrestled. And, matches could be very long. You may have a 2 to 3 hour match. They were all 2 out of 3 falls. And it may be, it might take 2 hours for the first fall to end. And you might see a guy there just holding a headlock for an hour and a half, or working a leg for 45 minutes trying to get the guy in a position to put on their submission hold or something like that. It, was very, very long and intense, and like I said, it was a real competitive sport at that time. Now, the only thing that's changed in that time, of course, the kayfabe era started after that, and where you had your predetermined outcomes, and matches started moving a little bit faster pace. You started seeing different maneuvers, and it became more of an exhibition where you would get like suplexes and body slams and things like that. That's when that kind of stuff started getting incorporated. And Lou Thesz was, like I said, kind of bridged the gap between those two eras, because he was first of all, he was a 5-time NWA world champion, recognized as 3 times, but he actually won and lost that title 5 times for a total of 3,749 days. So he held that title for a very, very long time. And then he's also a 2-time original world heavyweight wrestling champion. That was the title in the early 1900s, that when it was still a competitive sport and things like that. So that's why I say he bridged the gap. He was the last truly undisputed champion before the original World Heavyweight Championship was kind of fragmented and continued over into the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, and that's kind of the route that Lou Thesz took. Like I said, held the NWA title 5 times, 3 times recognized, of course, so that's the official number is 3 times. But so I think, again, this was a person who kind of carried the sport on his back from one era to the next, from the sporting era to the kayfabe era, as I call it. So that's why he earns this spot at number 4 on my list of top 10 all-time world champions. Coming to the top 3 now, number 3, and here's where some people are going to start not agreeing with me, saying that should have these in a little bit different order, but for me, number 3 is Hulk Hogan. And 6-time WWE champion, 6-time WCW champion, so total 12 times world heavyweight champion. Just one of he's definitely in the conversation for greatest of all time. And Hulk Hogan is a guy that changed the face of the business not once but twice. In the 1980s with Hulkamania, beating the Iron Sheik, and just kind of, the first real rock star type guy. And kind of brought wrestling into the mainstream with the whole rock and wrestling era, the very first WrestleMania, things like that, and just became a household name, first ever professional wrestler on the cover of Sports Illustrated. It's Hulk Hogan. The name speaks for itself. You can't go anywhere in the world and say Hulk Hogan and not have somebody know who you're talking about. So I think we can leave it at that. And then, of course, change the face of wrestling again in the 90s with the formation of the New World Order, when he made his heel turn in 1996, siding with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And just, again, changed the face of the business, brought it to the mainstream, and that was probably still to this day the biggest boom era in professional wrestling. So, I know a lot of people are going to say Hulk Hogan deserves to be number 1, but for the cases of this particular list, he is number 3. So, number 2, and I'm sure everybody knows his name as well, is Bruno Sammartino. 2-time Worldwide Wrestling Federation heavyweight champion, held the title for a total of 11 and a half years, which is a record. His first reign from 1963 to 1971, 2,803 days, will never be touched. Nobody's ever even come close to that title reign, and I don't think anybody ever will. And that says a lot about Bruno. Back in the territory days, a lot of times the champion was either the owner of the territory or a family member of the owner of the territory. That's why I know a lot of people may say that I what about somebody like Verne Gagne? Verne Gagne was a 10-time AWA World Champion. Yes, he was, and he's one of the greatest wrestlers, trainers ever, all time. That cannot be argued. But Verne Gagne was also the owner of the AWA. So, and I mean, for the purposes of this list, I did not include anyone who was the owner of a territory, simply because it's kind of, I don't know, I mean, I understand why owners did that back in the day. It was like, well, who can I really trust? I don't want somebody, I don't want my champion leaving my territory to go to another territory and taking my belt with them. So a lot of times they would carry the title themselves, like Verne, like Fritz von Erich. Fritz von Erich held his championship for a long time, and then it was always on one of his sons. Once in a while, you'd see it on somebody like Jimmy Garvin or Chris Adams, but a lot of times you would see it on one of the von Erich boys. And of course, Kerry von Erich held the world-class world championship quite a few times. So did Kevin von Erich. But again, if a promoter is putting a championship on somebody other than himself or a family member, it shows a lot of confidence in that person, shows a lot of trust in that person. So that's why I've got the people on this list that I do. And Bruno Sammartino, to carry that title for 8 years, just shows the kind of confidence that Vince McMahon Sr. had in him, shows the kind of trust he had in him, shows what kind of an honorable man Bruno was, and obviously the fans were in love with Bruno. It was no question. He was the face of the company. He was the face of wrestling at that time. Sold out Madison Square Garden more times than anybody could possibly count. I would say Bruno is probably the greatest WWE champion of all time. But on this list, he is number 2. And of course, right now we get to number 1. If you haven't figured it out who it is yet, it of course is the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Now, depending on who you ask, the number of times that Ric Flair's been world champion can vary. By my count, he's officially recognized as a 16-time world champion by WWE. By my count, he is actually a 24-time world heavyweight champion. He has won and lost some version of the world heavyweight championship 24 times. 12 times the NWA, 8 times WCW, 2 times WCW International. If you're not sure what that is, look it up, because it was kind of a weird time for WCW, and 2 times WWF. So altogether, 24-time world heavyweight champion. He is the person I most associate with the big gold belt. Of course, I think everybody knows what that is, which eventually went on to be known as the World Heavyweight Championship in WWE. It was the WCW World Heavyweight Championship prior to that, and that belt was actually made specifically for Ric Flair in the mid-'80s, and one of the only belts made by actually, I think it was the only belt. Jim Crockett Promotions commissioned that belt from a company that made belt buckles for rodeo champions, as a matter of fact. So, but yeah, so that belt was made specifically for Ric Flair. That's a belt he took with him when he went to WWE and kind of showed it off on TV until WCW filed a lawsuit to get it off of TV and to get the belt back from Flair. But I don't think anybody can argue that Flair was the greatest world heavyweight champion of all time. I don't see anybody really breaking the record as far as number of championships. Like I said, by my count, it's 24. Officially it's 16. But any way you slice it, I mean, just look back at some of the matches he's had in his career between names like Dusty Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, Barry Windham, Sting, Shawn Michaels. I mean, you could list off any big name in the wrestling business from the last 30 years, and I guarantee you some of their best matches have been against Ric Flair. He makes everybody who steps in the ring with him look like $1 million, and when Ric Flair gets in the ring, you are guaranteed a great match, bar none. So yeah, in my opinion, I know a lot of people's opinion, the greatest world heavyweight champion of all time. So that's it for right now. That's my top 10 world heavyweight champions. I'll run back through them real quick. We've got number 10, Kazuchika Okada. Number 9, Shane Douglas. Number 8, Buddy Rogers. Number 7, AJ Styles. Number 6, John Cena. Number 5, Harley Race. Number 4, Lou Thesz. Number 3, Hulk Hogan. Number 2, Bruno Sammartino. And number 1, greatest world heavyweight champion of all time, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. So let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think maybe I've got some of these guys in the wrong order? Think some of them don't belong? Did I miss anybody you think should be on the list? Feel free to drop me a comment, drop me a message, shoot me an email at catchhookshoot@gmail.com. And but for right now, I'm going to sign off. So hopefully everybody has a good week. Once again, rest in peace, Nikolai Volkov and Brickhouse Brown. Going to be keeping a close eye on the Brian Christopher situation. Like I said, last I read before I recorded this, he was still on life support. So I'm sure that could change at any time. But definitely hoping he is able to pull through. But until next week, like I said, make sure you're following the podcast on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. You can find the show on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Podbean, YouTube, and feel free to drop me an email anytime, catchhookshoot@gmail.com. So until next week, I will sign off and hope everybody has a good week, and I will talk to you guys soon.